Cool. All right. So welcome to another episode of the Paranormal Misfit Podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy. And today we have a reoccurring podcast host again. Can you hear?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I just saw you shake your head and I was like, oh no. So welcome again. It's the Dr. Ghost Hunters. And this time Chad has brought his longtime friend and paranormal investigator as well, Jason. So do you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves again?
Yeah, sure thing. And sorry for the little brief introduction. I'll tell everyone here, we are in a kitchen of a hotel in Globe, Arizona, where we're investigating. And someone came in here like right as you started. And the worker was like asking me when the light's on. And I'm doing all these hand gestures. So I apologize for that. But
Okay.
yes, I'll introduce myself. Jason, you can introduce yourself. So I'm Chad. Jason and I both are part of Dr. Ghost Hunters, where you can find us on YouTube and all the social medias. We've been investigating off and on, Jason, for 10 years or so.
Yep.
Probably a little bit longer since medical school, which, gosh, I guess has been a while now, and really got into some investigations over the past couple of years where we've been going off on our own and buying more equipment. And over the past year, we've decided, hey, it's probably time that we should put some of these antics and our investigations onto videos so that people can share in the fun with us. So that's kind of how we've created that over the past year.
Yep. So I've been investigating with Chad for about 10 years now, like you said. And we always ask ourselves if we have too much gear. I don't think the answer is
No.
ever a yes to that. So
Too much to haul around, but not too much. That's
we look like a film crew walking through the airport, but
Oh, that should be fun. I can only imagine because TSA lines are insane.
yeah.
Yes, they are. Jason's got a good gig with that, though. You leave me to gather up all the bags while you mysteriously go off for an hour to go get the
To
rental
get the car.
Somehow you come back with bags of food that weren't in the car either, which I'm always curious
Yep.
about.
Okay. So I know you guys did a live stream last night and I believe the night before too, right? In Globe,
That's
Arizona.
correct.
So do you guys want to go ahead and touch on those?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll tee him up and then, of course, jump in wherever. So we are currently doing a road trip through Arizona. And with this, we've had 3 nights in a row. Tonight will be the last, where we live stream. And then, of course, we'll go back through all of our evidence and edit them and make them into full-length videos. This should be coming out sometime early in 2024. But really, this road trip was very spur of the moment. Really, just a few weeks ago, you said, hey, I've got some time I got to kill through work and days that I got to take off. And we are looking for hopefully warmer locations than what we experienced in Salt Lake City during the winter. And Arizona came to mind. As we started looking throughout Arizona, of course, Tombstone comes to mind as being a haunted place. Of course, everyone knows of the Birdcage Theater.
Yep.
And so that led us to part 1 of our live stream was down in Tombstone. And then the next night, which is where we are now, we drove up to Globe, Arizona, which I was nowhere ever on my radar. But we found a couple of places up here to investigate. And so we did a live stream last night at the jail. And then tonight we'll be at a YMCA that was actually built in 1917. So over 100 years old, with some reports of incredible activity. And I think we could probably leave it general like that, but there's a whole bunch more detail that we could go into, either how we booked these or what we saw. So any direction you want to go, we're up for.
Okay. So I had to rewatch the live stream of the Madam's Room, which we were just talking about a little earlier. So first off, good job, guys, on dolling up the room. I loved it. It gave me the best laugh ever.
Even guys need romance.
I love the setup. You guys get really creative.
Well, when you have a 2 or 3 hour road trip from Phoenix down to Tombstone, there isn't really a whole lot to do. And we had already done our research on the places that we were going to go. And, it's just kind of Jason and I joking around. And we're like, gosh, we're in a Madam's Room. Like, what if we found some LED candles and put them on the bed and some fake flowers and put them on the bed as well? So
Yeah.
kind of a spur of the moment thing, but ended up working out pretty well.
We just wanted them to be comfortable.
Yes.
I know I was watching Sarah and them, and they were dying laughing.
So the other part of this is that with that specific location, I mean, we joke around about it, but also there was very limited information online about the Hotel Tombstone, which is where we did this investigation. And so we didn't know how much room we would have or how close together rooms would be. And so we wanted to be mindful of other people staying there. And we just didn't know what that investigation is going to look like. And when you live stream a place, especially somewhere you haven't been before, it's hard, right? Like, of course we want to go ghost hunting, and Jason and I are going to hang out and we're going to have a good time because we always do. But we also want the viewers to have a good experience with us. And so part of that was like, well, if we're limited in our ability to investigate with whatever this hotel was going to look like, then we also want to make sure that there was something there to have a good laugh at as well. And we didn't tell Sarah or Jamie ahead of time. And we knew that Sarah's eyes would just roll right out of her head. She's used to me doing stuff like this all the time. So she always gets a good laugh out of it.
So how did you guys feel being in the Madam Room and doing the live stream in it?
Well, I think Chad had a special kind of experience sleeping in the bed that we did all that on, but it was interesting. There's definitely, you know, some activity there that we found, and you'll see on the full video. But
so we can probably set the scene a little bit more so people can have in their mind, unless they're aware of the hotel tombstone, which again, I couldn't find much on. So the hotel tombstone actually is 4 rooms that sit atop of a general store that is immediately across the street from the famous Birdcage Theater. I mean, you walk outside and it's right there. And so you have to enter from the back of the general store to get up there. There's a common area, and then there's 3 rooms that are just right next to each other with paper thin walls. And then the Madam Suite is on the corner of this that also has a balcony that walks out over the general store and looks directly into the Birdcage Theater. And as you can imagine, this thing is well over 100 years old. Creaky floors, wood everywhere. You know, there's barely pipes. But with that being said, I think the investigation went pretty well. As soon as we sat down in there, you brought out your K2 meter and you were getting hits almost immediately. And this place is not lined with wires. I mean, I'm surprised there's electricity in there. And so we immediately started to have some activity there. We focused our investigation kind of on one of the beds. And, you know, the thought is it's a Madam's room, but also because at the end of the day, like, we're just investigating a hotel room. So it's not like we could move around a whole lot. But as the night went on, we actually did pick up quite a bit of activity.
Yeah, there were some SLS figures over the bed that we were able to catch.
Yes.
Pretty consistently over, you know, a 10 or 15 minute time period. Like Chad said, the K2 was going off fairly consistently, you know, reaching the yellows and the oranges. Yeah,
really showing high fluctuations in magnetic field.
Yeah, so there's a lot of activity there.
You know, we should talk about that SLS a little bit too. Chrissy, on the investigation last night, which we can talk about that in a moment, but you asked about different apps and how we can trust different apps. And the SLS Figures, so the SLS is a structured light system. These devices project out lights, and they're supposed to pick up on humanoid figures that we can't see with our naked eye. And then they map them out as stick figures, right? That we've all seen and joke about. But you had an app through GhostTube. GhostTube makes an app that's just right through the phone, and you were capturing them there. But I had also recently purchased an SLS system from one of the other organizations that makes these devices. And at the same time, we were both picking up figures in the same location with the same app. So I think when we look at apps, we always want to be mindful that there could be motives as to why these things may go off, right? That aren't always ghosts. But the fact that we had both of those go off at the same time in the same location, while we also had, you know, some of our electromagnetic field stuff going off on that bed, that was, to us, you know, it seemed pretty notable.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's something we really try and do with our more scientific background is, you know, try and correlate multiple different instruments. So it's not just one that may be picking up something, or, you know, there's just something weird about the setup that picks up that instrument. We try and corroborate with multiple independent instruments. So
it's the investigation. We tried to again tie it into the Madam's room. So we put the flowers on the bed and the candles, and someone in our live stream chat suggested to put money out there. And so we did. And when we did that, we started getting more hits, like on our electromagnetic field tripwire and on the lantern that detects magnetic field. And it did seem to work. Yeah. It really did. Yeah. Which was odd.
Well, I did an SLS method. It started out, I think, $20 were on the bed. And by the time I got done.
Oh, the Estes.
Estes method. Yeah. And by the time I got done, there was $80 or $100 on the bed. I don't know what happened, but
conjured up some money. So it really was quite active. I think we did the live stream for about an hour. And right after that, we shut things down, but we kept investigating. And so we turned off all the lights. We tried to get it a bit more quiet than what it is on the live stream. And I sat on the bed and did an Estes session. And as Jason alluded to, this, of course, you put on noise canceling headphones, you plug it into a spirit box, and all you're hearing is the radio waves. And of course, the hope is that we hear spirits that come through there and speak through us. Now, as I was doing that, it could just be the fact that the bed is really old and it was on rollers and it was a wood floor. But I felt like the bed was shaking. Like there were times I felt that it was shaking. This is the really hard part of doing video stuff, is from an investigation standpoint, we could say like, oh, that's an interesting finding. We try to see if we can pair it up with any of our gear going off at the same time. But it's also like, I can't prove that it was shaking. But it did make it creepy, because once we stop our investigation, it's like, okay, now I'll just roll over and sleep here. And so that always adds a little bit level of chill factor to it too. It's a little bit chilling.
You guys stayed in separate hotels, right? In that.
So we were going to, we were going to, and we did not end up doing it. So this is a little bit of a story. I'll try and condense it. Jason and I were trying to figure out where to investigate in a hotel in Tombstone. So before we even started that investigation, we were at the Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone, and we investigated there for 3 hours, cruised over to the hotel and investigated there. Now, we got to Hotel Tombstone and the Lorian Motel, which is just behind historic Allen Street, because we jumped in a Facebook Tombstone group and asked the locals where we should go. We figured that would hopefully take out some of the commercialized, locations of paying $700 to go to Birdcage and, whatever comment I guess I'm trying to make there. But the locals told us that those were the 2 locations to go. So we did have a room at the Lorian. When we went over there and checked in, it was hopping. There were people everywhere. Every room was full. And just the motel style nature of it, there wasn't going to be a chance for us to get a good.
Yeah, it would have been hard to rule out anything as supernet or paranormal or just the person in the room next door. So,
yeah. So what stories were they sharing for you guys to actually book a room there? Like what made it like one of the
was interesting.
Okay.
The reports there is that they would see a woman in the room. They would also hear noises, hear footsteps walking around, which we didn't catch either of those things while we were there. But those were the reports. And then at the Lorian, I think it's more lore than anything else.
Yeah.
There's the classic reports that if you Google this, Larian Motel, almost every website says the same story, that there were twin girls that were sleeping there. They both felt something weird in the night. They didn't say anything to each other until the next morning. And then they felt that they had the same thing. Also reports that there's a man that's walking around inside the first 4 rooms, which I guess were the original rooms of the motel. But interestingly, as we did research on it, we couldn't find that there was a classic narrative associated with a haunting there. It's not like there were deaths there, shootouts that were recorded. It's not that people were saying that there's a portal there. And so we couldn't really find anything on that. And when we pair that up with the fact that it was so crowded, and we got lucky with the Hotel Tombstone, despite the fact that there were 3 other rooms there, only one of them was booked.
Oh.
And so we ended up both just staying in the Hotel Tombstone. Is a long way around that answer.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I was wondering because, I remember you guys had mentioned you were going to both stay in separate ones, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah.
So last night's live stream was on the jail, which I absolutely love. So it's so funny because during that kind of time period, it seems like all the jails look the same because that jail looked exactly like the one in St. Augustine. And oddly enough, they have mannequins in them too, in certain cells.
Huh.
Yeah.
Should give you a good scare when you walk by.
Yeah.
Especially if it's your first time and you don't know.
Exactly.
So, how did you guys find the jail, and what kind of stories were you hearing about it before you decided to investigate it?
Yeah, well, maybe I can touch on how we found it, and then if you can remember some of those stories that we had that we talked about last night, I want to comment there. So the way that we found it is something I wish every state had. Through a Google search of trying to find locations to book, which for us is always the challenge, right? Access is king for all of these investigations. The Arizona Ghost Tours, I believe is their name. I should have had this written down. They have set up a very simple way to access different locations for either group or private investigations. Oh. And it is an incredible website. I can't say enough positive things about them. Yep. They had laid out on their website 4 or 5 different locations. They tell you the price, the start time, the end time. They'll tell you exactly how long the tour is going to take. And all of these things matter when you go on a paranormal investigation, right? Like these things truly do. And so through that website, we were able to book the jail, which was nice. Some of the reports there too, our kind of docent for the night, his name was Vinny. He's great. He's been investigating for decades and decades, but he had some pretty good stories for us.
Shout out to Vinny. He was great.
Yeah.
He was really good. But yeah, there were some good stories, some of them which have been on some of the different TV shows. You know, the individual that may or may not have drowned two girls from the town.
Yeah, Kingsley Kingsley was the famous inmate.
Yep. And he was taken up to one of the cells in the upper floors, second floor, I believe it was. And during the night, he was actually shot from a building across the alleyway. So
from an angry townsman.
Yeah. So we investigated that room a little bit. We spent a lot of time in tank 1, which was the bottom floor where they kind of have that main set of cells where I think it was 28 individuals. I think there was 8 cells of 4 people apiece.
Yeah.
Plus a bathroom. So we spent a lot of time there, got some great evidence that we'll show on the full length video.
And the reports there were pretty wild too. So going into it, you know, we were excited. The reports are shadows, shadow people that are there, hearing doors, you know, the jail cells open and closing and loud clanks, hearing keys rattling around, always hearing sounds, whether it's taps or knocks or voices on different floors, and then lots of equipment interaction as well. So really the whole gambit of things.
And as Chad found out, there's cats outside that make noises too.
Oh my gosh. So we had an episode during the live stream. I don't know if you saw this part. We were up on the 2nd floor and Jason's doing an Estes. So I'm kind of like there in my own element. I know you are too, like you're in the jail. So you had it worse off than I did as far as the scare factor. And I hear this screech. I have not been startled like that in a long, long time. I thought it was in there and it was coming to get me. That was gonna be the end of it. Just gonna leave you with all the equipment inside the jail and drive right back to Phoenix and fly home.
Did you guys? So I did watch it. I don't know if you guys have went back and watched any of it, but on the 2nd floor, before you get to Jason, right? I think he was either coming from an upper level or a lower level. Did you happen to hear the low whistle that actually went on when you were talking to him? Like to point that he was like right there.
I don't think that I did. So you said it was when we were up on the 2nd floor?
I believe you were on the 2nd floor and Jason might have been coming from the 3rd floor.
Ah, okay.
Because I remember there was like an angle and you're like, so that's Jason, because you were debunking the noises. And then it was right after you turned back, there's a low whistle that happens.
Oh.
You know what? I think I remember seeing the comment about it, but I didn't go back and listen to it. So we definitely need to. I think I know exactly where that is. And we haven't gone back and reviewed the evidence from it just yet. But towards the end of that, so there was a decent amount of evidence that happened on the live stream. Like there were just noises. I never felt like we had a good, strong narrative, you know, of interacting with someone during the live stream. We just had a bunch of individual things happen. But after, so we shut off the cameras and we went back into the 1st floor of the jail and we turned off all the lights. We set up some of our gear, including the GS2 from Ghost Stop, like the laser grid that will map, any movements or heat signatures. We had a motion detector, like the coffin box music player, the motion detector, and then our EMF gear. We had almost nonstop activity for the next 30 minutes. We can't wait to edit it and show you guys. And we heard walking in the jail cell, like right next to us. I heard at one point, it sounded like someone breathing from the jail cell. It was really creepy. Like, it wasn't a high startle factor, but it was nonstop. Jason captured some incredible SLS figures that would line up exactly with when the motion detector that was inside the cell, it would go off, the SLS figure would show up like it was walking out of the cell, and then in the middle is where we had all of our gear, and then the gear would light up. So it's almost like an inmate was just walking out of the jail cell into the middle and playing with the gear.
And the GS2 was going off. We normally don't see a lot of activity on the GS2, but the pixels were showing up to where the SLS was showing figures. So we had 3 or 4 at least different pieces of equipment triggering at the same time. So
it was really wild for a while after that live stream. That was a lot of fun.
I was about to say, during the live stream too, I think I heard a piano playing at one point.
During an Estes session, when we had mentioned what I called a guitar, and Sarah astutely corrected me, and we were talking about music, and Chrissy, I think that you had commented on a couple of things about music and steered me in a different direction than what I was thinking of asking questions, and it actually did prompt more responses from you. Of course, we haven't talked about this, but those questions that geared us towards that were from Chrissy on that Estes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's when you said that you heard a piano playing.
Yep.
And it was because at one point you said country, and I alluded to either my name is Chad or, whatever else was going on. And we said, oh, maybe it's music. And that's when you heard the piano playing.
Yeah.
And so as an aside, that's the part of we've been toying with that I love. I absolutely love it. I love the fact that someone can, if they're not out investigating on their own, or if they're not with us, that they can have that type of interaction with that. Like, that's something I wish that we had 10 or 20 years ago, when we were not investigating. So, and you helped guide right to it, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah, you had a great suggestion to have him touch Chad on the shoulder.
I did not like that as much.
So I appreciated that, but
no comment on that one.
You didn't get
like
touched on the shoulder,
hand, right?
I did not get touched on the shoulder, but Jason did mention, and maybe Chrissy, you can chime in on this. It's when I was sitting in the isolation chamber, I think is when this happened. And I really was doing a sensory deprivation session. I felt the floor, it felt like it was moving, like someone was walking behind me. And it was very disorienting. Like, I almost felt like I was going to fall over. Like, I didn't sway. I wasn't knocked over. It was just an odd sensation, which the only reason I call it out is simply if it lines up with any other gear going off, I would want Jason to be aware of that. But if that was around the time that you said for it to touch my shoulder, I would actually think that feeling that I had was a little more meaningful.
When I think you said you felt like a chill on your hand, and that's when you stuck out your hand and felt, and I had said, Chad has his vest on and some clothes on. So if you can't touch his shoulder, feel free to touch his hand.
Yeah. And those are tough too. Just as a quick comment on the cold spots, I can't tell you how many times I have watched certain television shows with lead investigators and they say like, hey, I feel a cold spot right here in front of me. And I immediately dismiss it because there's no proof of that unless I have a FLIR camera on me that can show that. So it's really hard. But again, we call it out like when we're investigating simply to see if other evidence corroborates with it.
So
I don't
you also
like
said,
as I called it out, I was like, "No, Chad, don't say that. You're being that guy." Sorry, Chrissy. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I mean, Zach Bagans always has a cold spot, so just throwing it out there.
It's so weird. It always ends up at the time that they're not catching much evidence. That cold spot just bam, there
comes
it is.
up, and the
really
chills on the back of
word.
the neck, and all of a sudden the goosebumps come.
Of course.
You said during your SD session that you heard a different language. Could you identify what language that was?
No, it wasn't Spanish. I don't know what it was. It was interesting. It was certainly a different language. It sounded, if I recall correctly, like a man's voice, but I don't know what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know that I have any other input on that. Maybe we'll be looking as we go back through and watch the video. Maybe we'd be fortunate enough to capture an EVP.
But you're pretty sure it wasn't Spanish.
It wasn't Spanish.
Because that's what I was thinking in the moment, just
No.
given the part of the country we're in.
Right.
But I obviously couldn't ask you at that point.
I definitely don't speak Spanish well, but took multiple years of it in school, and I could at least pick it off.
Okay.
And with just some patients that I have that are Spanish speaking, but it wasn't Spanish.
Could have been Native American.
It could have been.
Could have been, yeah.
Yep, that could very well be the case. And certainly, Globe, abuts, native ground here. And certainly there were feuds with Apache natives here before. So that could very well be the case.
Yep.
So there was tapping. I think during Chad's session, did you guys manage to debunk it at all? Or did you think it was the furnace? Because I did notice they had like one of those really old furnaces like in the corner of the room, apart from where you were sitting.
That was in the isolation area. Is that correct?
Yep.
So it wouldn't have been from that because there was actually no heat inside of there. It was so cold last night.
Ooh.
We had two little plug-in, we didn't have them, but the host had two little plug-in heaters, one for the room that he stayed in and then one for the restroom. But it wouldn't have been from that.
Yeah, those old radiant heaters are not working right now. So
I wish they were. We did not debunk it. Do you remember hearing it?
I don't remember hearing it as I sit here right now. We'll have to go back and look, but I
let's go back
don't
and
remember hearing that.
And then you guys lost like connection a little bit. I want to say, was it during the isolation or was it when you went up to the third floor? During the live stream, you guys actually lost connection for a second.
I remember losing it. I don't remember where we were.
Oh, really?
Was that when you were levitating?
Get out.
No, Chad never levitated.
You and I joke about that all the time. You can't say that on here. Someone else can be like, see, I knew the frauds.
No, Chad didn't levitate, so that was a joke. I'm going to call it out like when someone whispers.
Yeah,
Strike that from the record.
Exactly. No, I don't recall it going out. Were you on the camera at that time?
I think I was, and Sarah was able to get it back up.
I see. Was anything going on during that time?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Interestingly, though, we have had equipment malfunctions in the past that we tend to think are paranormal. We went up over the bridge of sighs or bridge of sorrows that connected the courthouse to the jail after the live stream, and Jason did a session up there. I went up there. We just swapped out batteries. My GoPro still had about 40% left. As soon as we get out, we get into a session, Jason starts talking. My GoPro dies. And I didn't recognize it for about a minute. I fire it back up and it's at 39%. So I'm like, okay, there's still battery here. Like it should be fine. And again, it just shuts off and completely shuts off. So I pull out my phone, start recording, and I ask, I'm like, hey, if there are any spirits here, did you just make my GoPro die? And immediately on response, I'll have to show this to you. We'll put it in the clip. You say never.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I remember saying that.
It was like a creepy, mischievous never. But that one really seemed to correlate with some responses that we were getting.
Yeah.
But I don't know about the cutting out. We did try. I would say with it cutting out on the live stream, it very well could have been due to poor reception. We have hotspots that we bring to locations where our cell service is going to be very good, but we are remote. I mean, Globe is remote out here. And Chrissy, again, we apologize. We're late to start the podcast, right? Because we couldn't connect. But I guess I'm just saying that because of that, sometimes that can be paranormal. And I think the question's a perfect one to ask. But I think in that instance, we were just poor service.
Yeah. And that jail was built with a lot of steel and cement, so tough to get signal through some of that structure.
Oh, yeah. So do you guys ever compare your Estes sessions, like after you're done? Like, how did you feel? How did you feel? Like, do you guys ever find any similarities happening in between them, or is there more of like major differences? Because Chad, you seem to be more like, I think yours made you, I won't say uncomfortable, but you seemed a little bit more tense in yours than Jason was in his. Jason had a little bit of a malfunction. He was, going through stations, but he didn't seem as affected as you had.
I think we were worried about being on the madam's bed for that section. You were tense for that.
It's a stressful situation, right? You make sure you're performing okay, and like there's a lot of pressure with that, and it's hard. And there's a camera pointed at. I mean, what do you want? We don't typically have that type of show, man. So, Chrissy, going back to your question. Oh gosh, can people hear how red my cheeks are through the podcast? Is that a thing? Okay, so going back to your question, we do debrief after. And in fact, one of the last things that I actually ran back to grab was a book, because we like to kind of document some of the things that we had and the feelings that we had. And I will say that while you and I haven't, Jason, you and I have not specifically talked about this, when you do Estes sessions, you are very good at staying focused. And your responses verbally seem to be much more direct to questions that are asked of you. Mm-hmm. I don't think you've ever come out of an Estes session and said that you felt something physically, but that audible communication, you definitely do a better job with that for whatever the reason may be.
Yeah, and we had that experience at the Ritz where that potential shadow figure was walking by.
Yes.
And I forget what was said at that point, but I didn't feel anything, but I said something that made a lot of sense in that moment.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you were right on it. And I feel like for me, I don't know that I've had any true moments during an Estes session where I 100% felt that it was a spirit talking to me through there. And that's the hard part about an Estes session, right? Especially during a live stream, is we call these things out and we're calling out everything that we hear. Yep. And then we want to take that and see if there's actually good evidence there. Now, with that being said, I do feel that I get more physical manifestations when I do that than I ever do truly feeling that there's a good audible presence coming through me. When we went to the Whaley house and we sat under, Yankee Jim's arch where he was hung, I felt something on my neck. I felt as though there was something back there, so much so I rip off my blindfold that I had on there and looked. Yeah. I think it was a blindfold that I had on. And then yesterday during the Estes, I really did feel like there was someone walking behind me. And that creeped me out. Like that just gave me a very uneasy feeling, not because it was malicious, but simply because I was vulnerable in that moment and felt that there was something near me that I couldn't explain.
Well, that's interesting too, because in Jackson, when we did an Estes with you, you had a smell.
Yes, that's right.
Sensation.
Yep.
So you've had those. I've never had that. And then when we were in the pink room, I was doing the Estes session and it had a direct response, but you were the one that had your shirt pulled.
Yep. Yeah, that's
so. Maybe you're just the cuter
Chrissy,
investigator.
Very, very astute observation. Like a conversation we haven't had, but I think your observation is dead on the money.
Yeah. So I don't remember which one of you it was, but someone had the name Johnny come through.
Yeah, I didn't.
You did. Okay. So with Johnny, did you guys happen to have any chances of looking back through any records to see if there was a Johnny prisoner or a worker, or because of the area, you had Native Americans, you had Hispanics, and then you also had the Asian community. So it could have been a Juan or a Jacinto as well, because those are two different names for John in the different languages. So have you had any chances to go look through that?
So we haven't looked through the records, but we did talk with Vinny after, and he said that a Johnny has come up, and they think there was an inmate named Johnny.
Okay.
At one point, which, over 70 years, there's a probably pretty good chance of a Johnny going there, but they have heard that before. So,
nice.
Right.
Yeah,
it was interesting. Vinny that he alluded to, I think we spoke earlier, who's our docent for the night. He is a paranormal investigator. He was editing his own gear and he stayed down in the first floor the entire time. So he was unaware of Johnny. When he asked what we had found, we said that was kind of the name that came through. And he's like, oh yeah, we had a Johnny who was an inmate. So again, it's tough I would love for there to be a famous Johnny that died, died or passed in the jail, or someone who had a story, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that would really fit that. But I do think it's notable that there was not a whole lot coming through that spirit box. I mean, which is good. I mean, you don't want that to be the case, but Johnny was the name that came through.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Have you guys thought about playing poker again with any of the ghosts like you did in California? You are in Tombstone.
You know what, mate? Maybe tonight we should do that. So tonight we're going to a YMCA that's over 100 years old. And this YMCA, upon our research that we had, I mean, it seemed like that would be the location for it. They had pool tables, swimming pools. They would house, I think some of the miners from the town had up to 20 dorms. Yeah. That could be the location for it. I don't think I brought any cards with me this time.
They won't be hard to find. We can pick those up. But
that card playing though from the National Hotel really was the most incredible thing. We talked about it on our top 5, paranormal moments in review of 2023 that we made and put on YouTube. That would have been one of the top ones. Like, just visually, we didn't have a good enough camera on it and good enough audio to truly let people have the experience that we had with it.
Yeah.
And so,
we had good video for the one card that got called out, but there was definitely a second card that got called out. And the chances, I mean, that doesn't have to say anything, let alone a number, let alone the card that just happened to be in that hand.
And Chrissy, as an aside from that, but directly related, I think you and I spoke about this when we chatted a couple months ago. But that entire experience at the National Hotel, when we played in John Wayne's poker room and we had this response, just came up from Jason and I going up and chatting with people. We didn't pay to be in that location. We didn't book it out months in advance. They weren't advertising it. We simply had a room at the hotel. We went down and started chatting with the front desk. And, she just saw that we were nice, reasonable people who had an interest. And she's like, come here, let me show you something. And takes down the barricades, and we go down there and investigate and get that. So, for all those people out there that may not have, funds to go rent out a place or may not have the contacts to do it, it's always just a good reminder, just chat with people, and you never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah. And along those lines, earlier today, we were in the city just looking at museums, and we just happened to be talking to this guy in the museum, and we told him where we'd been the night before. He's like, what do you say? Oh, I got caught once, or I was in mischief and I got put in jail.
He was put in the jail that we were investigating last time.
He'd walked across the bridge of sighs, and so you just got to be friendly. You never know what you'll find.
I was like, oh, did you happen to leave part of your Horcrux in that jail? Were you chatting with me last night? Are you the person who prompted that cat to hiss and make me pee myself?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the Kingsley cell. First off, like I said, that was really creepy. Just mannequins alone, those things freak me out, especially in the darkness.
Yes.
And it's a weird mannequin too.
It is. It was really
the face somehow. So
was he laying down when he got shot? Is what it was?
I think so. So the legend is that he'd had part of his face shot off, whether that was self-inflicted or otherwise, it's up for debate. But so he had a bandaged face from that, and I think he was laying on the cot from that injury. They treated him and as best they could for the time, but I think he was laying down. Yeah,
that's what our historian had told us. Really pretty incredible as well. So they think he was laying down. The windows going into that cell are not large. And the shot from next door, the building next door, Jason and I looked at the angles and we just said, wow, it's pretty incredible. I mean, obviously unfortunate, but pretty incredible.
Not a big distance, but to be able to get it between the bars and have it just right, that's a tough shot.
So it is.
So I know
unfortunate all around.
You guys use a string, right? A string for the lights, like sensor lights.
Yes,
so
it's a tripwire.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. What did you guys like? How did you guys feel in his cell and around the cell? And why are the girls around there?
So they put up the girl mannequins because the story goes that one of the days before he died, he told one of the workers that he woke up in the middle of the night and had the 2 girls that he was accused of drowning visit him in the cell. And so that's, I guess, why they put up the mannequins, was to kind of create that scene. It certainly does make it startling when you see that. Now, being inside of that cell, the feeling, the hope is that we could really make direct contact with a specific individual spirit, which maybe this is just because of the brevity of us really going hard at these investigations. However, it's hard, in my opinion, to get one spirit to come speak with you on command by name as an individual. I was really hoping that we had enough information that if Kingsley or if the girls were there, I think it's Lulu and Myrtle, that if they were there, that they would come out and talk with us or interact with us. And the suspense, I think, was there. Like, it was quiet. Everything was there. The recipe for it seemed to be there, but it just didn't ever, for me, get the feeling that that was coming through.
Yeah, and we even tried to get some objects that a child that age. We got a little REM pod bear and tried some other things, and just didn't get a response that I recall.
It seems as though we did hear something in the background, like a tapping or a noise, when we were trying to call out towards the end there. But we never had anything else to validate that being the source.
Or it could have been the chair attacking me as I was trying to stand up. There's always that.
I think your butt got in the way of that one.
So was Kingsley's cell part of the women's ward? You guys kept pointing up and saying upstairs is the women's ward, and I thought that was really weird. That's where they would put him if that was the women's ward, and then downstairs.
I think it was the isolation ward. So if they had someone with psychiatric issues, or that they really needed to isolate, or they didn't have, that room that Chad did his Estes method in, that would be the room to go to. Where he had that injury, I think they put him up there to keep him out of the general population because he was in that fragile state.
And that location really, like, it is on the same wing as the women's ward. Just separated, as Jason noted, but they do have it set up really well. Part of our plan was to go back and further investigate that after our live stream ended, but we just had so much activity on the first floor that we just couldn't walk away from it. And so we didn't get a chance to go back there. But if anyone's out here and investigates that jail, it certainly would warrant more attention.
That's awesome. So let's see. Oh, you already answered that one. Sorry. I am not going to lie. I sat there and I was watching all of your videos and I was just making all these questions. I was like, I'm going to ask this and I'm going to ask this.
Your questions are fantastic. I told Jason in preparation for today, I was like, hey, just know, like, Chrissy, she knows her stuff and she's going to ask good thought-provoking questions and you have, and you always do.
Okay. So the live streaming, I really love that aspect, right? Because you don't get it. Obviously with cable channel, they're not going to live stream something too much unless it's like a football game or a baseball game. So what gave you guys, what made you guys want to do that? Because I think it really does a lot of good, because obviously you're not going to be editing in the middle of it. So you're not fixing anything. So it kind of helps with those paranormal skeptics and enthusiasts alike to be able to see how the investigations go. So when you're doing this, what are you guys anticipating the most of?
It's a good question. And I will say, as I think about that you're exactly right. Like, we're not editing it during. I can't tell you guys, Jason and I know nothing about the whole video world. Like, everything that you see is just me trying it and us figuring it out. And so there's so much preparation that goes into, like, trying to set this up. And it shouldn't be that hard, but it really does take us a long time to get everything set up. So yeah, there's not a chance I could edit this during. It would just be a disaster. But the thought as to why to start it, I think that was the first question that you asked. Truly, our goal with the videos, honest to goodness, is that we have so much fun no matter who we bring with us on investigations, that we just want other people to be able to experience it too. And when I started watching ghost hunting shows, I've mentioned this before, 10 or 20 years ago, I loved when the original TAPS team, Ghost Hunters, did a live Halloween stream event. It was one of the most favorite episodes that I ever have, and I remember watching. And I just remember thinking, man, it would be really cool to do that, because I wanted to experience what they were experiencing in real time. Like
Right.
for some reason, it just gives you that rush. And so that's kind of how that idea started. Sarah has really enjoyed kind of managing the chat and provoking us a little bit. And, you know, I want to make sure, you know, a peek behind the curtain, I want to make sure that Sarah's involved and enjoys this. Not only as my wife, but also it's time away from her if she's not there. And during investigations, like sometimes she'll just peace out and be like, okay, I'm going to go sleep. And I feel awful when she's sleeping in a location that we're investigating, but she loves helping to manage that part the first time that we tried it. And we're like, okay, it's fun. We think we can do it reasonably and have people enjoy this. And she's good at doing that. So that's really what helped spur that along. Okay,
Yeah.
Jason, did I stall enough for you to think of an answer to that really good question? I can keep rambling, but that's about as good of a stall as I got.
No, I think part of it too is, you know, when we're in the moment doing an investigation, we're focused on, you know, a particular instrument or a particular area. And, you know, our brains aren't really thinking through like, what are the possibilities here? What are some good questions to ask? And so having others log in and say, well, what about this? Or did you notice this? And, you know, we just can only notice so much. And so having more people pay attention, I think makes for a better investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, where you suggested having whoever that was in the isolation room go touch Chad's shoulder. Like, I wouldn't have thought of that. So, and I think in the madam's room, someone recommended putting some money on the bed. So, you know, added a little humor and might have, you know, encouraged some activity.
You're exactly right. We don't have the answers. So I'm just going to play off of that. And you've spurred some things in my mind. We don't have the answers, right, as to how to, you know, instigate activity or how to draw out all the activity. Like we try certain methods and people can see that in real time. But there isn't a playbook for this that's well written. And so give everyone the opportunity, just as Jason mentioned, to do all of those things can only help the community. You know, it helps with engagement and, you know, let's see what we can make happen together.
Yeah. And one specific instance, so when you were doing the Estes in the isolation room, it just so happened the cameras were lined up with the window.
Yes.
And so it looked like there was a shadow or something going on in the background. And Bob commented on that. And so I was able to debunk that in real time, that it was just my reflection. Whereas going back in a week, 2 weeks, whenever we look at this, we would have no idea what is that. And so I think it really helps improve the quality of the investigation to have multiple people watching this.
Yeah.
So thank you, Bob. Shout out.
Love you, Dad.
Bob was into it last night. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to say this. It's a huge compliment from me, by the way, when I say it this way. You guys remind me of, are you guys Josh Gates fans at all?
I've loved his show, not all of his, I haven't watched all of his stuff, but his expedition, oh gosh, he sends out 2 explorers and they go investigate the paranormal. I can't think of the name of it, which
it's Expedition X.
I love
was
that
about
show.
to say, you guys remind me of that show because you guys do so well of keeping that really healthy balance of like debunking and being skeptical while also trying to embrace what's happening around you paranormal wise too. So I love it. Love it. I mean, I love that show.
I appreciate that.
So
that's a great show.
How do you guys, I know Chad and I talked about this a while ago, but how do you guys manage to still keep that healthy aspect of keeping the balance of skepticism and the belief of the paranormal?
I think that's kind of built into what we do as a job and as our education is, you know, trying to figure out how to help patients and, you know, whatever in medicine, there's always that aspect of unknown.
Right. And
how do you balance that with actual evidence that's out there?
I completely agree. And to be honest, I don't think about it. It's very much related to my mindset of my day job. And that's to ask questions and always ask why and dig a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper until I find out a patient's why, you know, what drives them, you know, for their mental health or what condition is truly underlying that's leading them to their symptoms. And so it's that curious aspect that's ingrained in me. And I don't know if it's for better or for worse in the paranormal world, but I think Jason and I, our mindsets are the same. We've had the same training, and that is just kind of what's been beat into us for all those years.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know you shouted out Sarah and her empathic abilities. How has she been working on those?
Ooh, this is, I'll just give you the full peek behind the curtain. I think that I've always been curious about Sarah's empathic abilities. Even when we were dating, she would mention things that would happen, but would be a little passive about them and not necessarily want to dive into detail or discuss them or bring them up much. But it's always been curious to me that there was something there. And of course, wanting to be supportive of her, not trying to push her on that at all. And really over the past 6 months to a year, there have been so many instances where she has met others on our investigation. She met Elsie, who's the owner of Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home. She met with Beaker. He's one of the hosts of the EVP podcast and is a medium. And when she meets these people, before she even says a word to them, they will stop what they're doing and look at her and say, "Oh, you feel things too." And I think that that's helped given her a bit more support to know that what she is saying, that other people feel it too, or what she does feel, that other people feel it too. And it's made her feel a little bit more comfortable in speaking with it, or about it rather. And, I want her to have that journey on her own, as much as I would love it as a paranormal investigator to push her on it and say like, "Hey, really go push yourself, go sit in this room by yourself and tell me what you feel." That's just not the right thing to do. And it's not us in our relationship. And it's just, I don't feel great about that. And so we'll kind of let that evolve naturally.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing we try and do with everyone is create an opportunity if they're interested in this, if they've had experiences, not to push someone and say, "Have you ever, seen anything or heard anything?" But if they have had that experience, to share it with us. Like we have a common friend that we've known for 10 years. And last year we were going down to a football game and just chit-chatting. And on the way back, Chad and I mentioned, "Oh yeah, we do this." And he said, "Oh, you'd never believe what happened to me as a kid. And it happened to all my siblings." And then years later, like no one had mentioned it. And then it came up and they're like, "Oh yeah, we all have had that experience." So I think really just being open to it and letting people know that this is something we're interested in. If you want to talk about it, we want to talk about it too.
Yeah.
So
I will
Sarah.
say, her use of tarot cards is interesting to me. When you guys had the Ritz Theater, I was watching the Ritz Theater video, and when she was doing the card pulling, she was pulling a lot of male specific cards, right? Like she pulled a king card, a couple of king cards, and just like, not to say like this is something that she should keep in the back of her head, but just as a reminder though, king cards are males. So if she's pulling the cards and like, this is like the intuitive thing she's doing, maybe there's a male presence around her, which I think with the Ritz Theater there was there not?
The thought, yes. Some of the stories that Lodon told us, yes, especially in theater too.
Yep. The gentleman sitting in that specific chair. Yep.
So,
you're exactly right.
She doesn't always have to, or at least I don't think, she doesn't always have to match the cards to the meanings, like the actual meanings of the cards, right? Because, she was looking at the book and it helps, especially if you're trying to do readings, but also just kind of intuitively looking at what colors do you have coming up, what shapes and symbols are in the background. And then also like, is it a male? Is it a female? Is it a child? Because, when you have the court cards, you have the king, the queen, the knight, and then I don't remember what the other one is. Oh, a prince. So those two kind of flip-flop. And sometimes those also flip-flop based on sex as well. So those can kind of be more ambiguous, but your kings and queens for sure come up with those very dominating type of energies. So I thought that was really interesting. Like, I really like watching her use those. So want to see.
And I still think, I appreciate you saying that, and I'll pass that along to her because she definitely does enjoy tarot. And I think it's something that she is still learning, even though she has done it off and on for years. However, I think it helps as a bridge for some of these other experiences that she's having. And so it's her way of kind of dipping a toe into that. And we've wanted to incorporate that. And we just haven't found the perfect way to always have that blend into whether it's our videos or our investigation. But hearing that, we'll certainly pass that along and see how she can do that.
Have you guys looked more into mirror scrying? I remember I told you about it after watching your videos. Have you guys decided or even read into it yet?
No.
Not really.
Mirrors, I don't think that there are many places that we go that have an initial scare factor to me that I would say I wouldn't go there. Of course, there are things that can happen that will startle me, and we all saw that last night with the little kitty. Yeah. But mirrors, I have an interesting relationship with, and I don't think that story has been fully told because Jason and I have joked about mirrors for the last couple of years. However, and Jason, you and I haven't really talked a ton about this, the more that things continue to happen with mirrors, there has to be a point in time where I need to quit joking about it. Like it can only be a coincidence so many times.
Yeah.
Right? Before we become passive over it. So I do think that there's a healthy level. I don't know if it's healthy. There's a level of intrigue and a little bit of that where I don't know what I'm doing with it yet. And so I don't want to dabble with it in case there is something to it.
Yeah.
So I need to be better to answer your question of looking into it. No, I have not done it. I need to be better about doing that before I jump in.
Yeah. And we do have an idea for a new kind of experiment with that to see. I don't think we've had the opportunity to do that yet, but we do have some ideas
With mirrors?
With mirrors.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have them in the house. I'm going to bring them on the plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys have investigated the graveyard already? Or is that tonight?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
No, we did the graveyard right before we did the hotel tombstone. I mean, that day was so packed. We get on the flight at 6 a.m. or we leave at 6 a.m. We get on our flight, we get the rental car, we drive straight down to Tombstone. There's someone in our room, like physically in our room when we get there. And so we had to find the manager of the general store because this isn't a normal hotel, kick them out. So we cruise over to the cemetery and investigated the cemetery for 3 hours, then rallied back really quick and then did the live stream. So we did do the Boot Hill Cemetery as our very first investigation. We didn't live stream that one. We're definitely going to make a video out of it. But then tonight is our last night, and that will be at the YMCA up here in Globe, Arizona.
How did you guys feel in the cemetery?
I mean, it was definitely creepy. The great thing was it was a full moon. The moon came up, and we wouldn't have needed lights to see. Like, it was so bright.
Yeah. And a beautiful setting for a ghost hunt.
Yeah.
Right? Like overlooking the valley. It was incredible.
Yeah.
The activity started slow. There were certain grave sites that were thought to be hotspots. And interestingly, our guide, who was there for the evening, he is friends with someone who is a medium, so we are told. And her message to him was that the spirits know that we were coming. Remember, that was like the first thing he said to us, which, okay, and interesting. But started slow. We did start to pick up some activity on our EMF meters and even a little bit of SLS over by the McLaury graves. And the McLaurys, if I'm thinking of their name correctly, they are some of the ones who died, and Billy Clanton, I think, is the other, at the shootout at the OK Corral. And so their grave sites is where we started picking up activity. And then, gosh, we also had some of our other activity, which was limited but not insignificant, over the grave sites of kids.
Yeah.
So that's always tough.
Well, we also had a specific grave we were looking for that we didn't know where it was, and the K2 directed us to it. While
that's right.
While he was, our guide was actually went back to the room or the shop to get the map to see where it was, and we were pretty close to it by the time he got back.
You know what? You're exactly right. And let me elaborate a little bit more, because we talked about how this could be significant for outdoor investigations. That was our first outdoor investigation. We didn't know how it was going to go, especially with an audio component. So we really tried to rely on our devices. Now, this K2 meter started going off. We said a name, and then it started really lighting up. So this was the Kansas Kid is what he's known as. And in this graveyard, there are 10 to 12 rows of grave sites, and they usually mark them off by what row they're on. And so as we start speaking to him, We said, if you would like to show us to your gravesite, let us know. And of course it lights up. And so we start numbering. I tell them, okay, here's how we're going to play this game. This is row 1 all the way up to row 10 or row 12. And I'm going to count through the numbers. And when I get to your row, I want you to make it light up. And I get to 5 or 6 right in that area. And that's where it lights up. And as Jason mentioned, during that time is when our host for the evening went to go find out where he was buried. And sure enough, it was in row 6.
Oh.
And he guided us right over to it. Didn't really have a message. We tried to capture some EVPs and didn't get anything, but that was interesting that he seemingly wanted to be acknowledged, wanted to show us to his gravesite, and then things kind of went quiet after that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I know you're doing Arizona right now. What other places do you have planned for 2024?
See, these are the good questions.
We're thinking Bahamas, right? Somewhere warm with the beach.
Right
Hey,
in the
in the
so cold
Bahamas.
last night.
In the Bahamas is Johnny Cash's home, where he is said to have passed away. And on top of that, it was also an old plantation that was owned by a white woman who was not very nice to her slaves. Think like Madame Lalaurie in New Orleans, but
Oh, yes, in New Orleans. Whew. So speaking of which, so to answer your question, we have a couple of sites that we're very excited about that are already locked down. We have the Idaho State Penitentiary, which we're going to be investigating back-to-back nights in the spring.
Oh.
Interestingly, at a former job that I had, we'll leave it at that, I would travel, and I happened to stumble upon the Idaho State Penitentiary during one of these travels. Went for a tour, was like, oh, this place looks haunted, did some researching, come to find out it is haunted, so we ended up booking that. We also have a place that we have not seen be investigated, at least put out on any form of social media, and that is the Miners Hospital in Park City, Utah.
Oh.
Big mining town in its early days, and of course some of our most incredible evidence, including what we had last night, have come from mining towns. And to have that Park City Miners Hospital, we're very excited about that. As for the rest of our locations, we have 1 to 2 road trips that we are going to do. And in fact, we are recording this just before New Year's Eve. Our plan on New Year's Eve is to get together and lock down plans for next year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we have 2 big ones that we're really excited for that are new to us. And then we have 1 to 2 road trips planned.
And I just want to say that the Idaho State Penitentiary will have a special treat. Compliments of my Detroit Lions, who now have won their division and will be going to the playoffs for the first time in 30 years.
Jason, there's something you got to know about podcasting. That is not going to age well when they lose in the first round of the playoffs. And you just outed yourself as a newbie at podcasting. However, Jason and I, there is a long history here of Jason and I placing bets with each other. This has been going on ever since high school, and we love to humiliate each other when the other person loses. And so our 2 teams were playing in this year's football season. My team lost, and so I have to spend some time in solitary confinement at the Idaho State Penitentiary, dressed in whatever costume Jason and the ladies deem fit for me. So definitely happy that you brought that up to mention that to everyone here.
It's a special treat.
Thank you, Jason. Oh, boy.
I just want that on record, so when you're driving up, you can't say, I don't remember that bet. Why do you have that outfit in the back?
Appreciate you, man.
All right. What are your top 5 dream locations to investigate? Like if money and everything wasn't an option, what are the locations?
I think a castle in Europe would be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many, I don't have one in mind, but I'd love to investigate an old castle.
Yeah. Again, another fantastic question. And people have asked me this before, and I haven't had a good answer. And you would think that I would go back and pin this down a little bit. I believe that a European trip would be incredible because of the history. I feel that some of the places in the eastern U.S. that have a lot of history, including Gettysburg, would be there as well. For some reason, I think a lot of us are in this boat as well, but history behind a location tends to build up the hype or the excitement to go investigate it for me. And so that seems to be what I'm drawn to now. But as far as the perfect list goes, I have yet to compile that, which kind of frustrates me a little bit. So Chrissy, I love your question. Like one of the things that I try to do, whether I'm teaching med students when I have them or any other stuff where I'm involved with people who are still going through school, is to tell them to have goals. And goals are very important to me. They're very important in all aspects of my life. And that's something that I don't have yet. So I'm disappointed. Next time we chat, I'll have them for you.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So
What about you? Well,
me?
can we flip the script? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I would do Alcatraz just because of the movie. If we're going European based, I would do Dracula's Castle because you can sleep in it overnight.
Oh.
And they opened it up. I don't know if you ever follow it. I can't remember if I saw it on TikTok or if it was Instagram, but they did a Halloween special where you could stay the night of Halloween there.
Oh, wow.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. On our trip up here, there was a radio show we were listening to. They said 7% of the American public believes in vampires. So
Yeah.
get a different group of subscribers for that
There
one.
you go. Let's see. I would do all of England just because of King Henry VIII and like him beheading his wives and all of the crazy stuff he did. Like, and there's 2 boys that are still missing, 2 princes. Like, they're somewhere within the towers. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
US based, aside from Alcatraz, would probably be all over New Orleans. I mean, there's no way you can't not find a hotspot somewhere in there.
Yeah.
That's
been really discussed many times.
Yeah.
We have, and over the last few months, you know, as we're sitting around my house and pondering ghost hunting locations, New Orleans has come up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So much history there, so many locations there. Access is going to be key, but certainly when we get together in a couple of days with the girls, New Orleans is going to come up again.
Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's tons you could do there. I love St. Augustine. I think it's great. Oddly enough, St. Augustine was not the first settlement in Florida. It was actually the French had settled in Fort Caroline, which is part of Jacksonville. They're still the old fort. And the Spaniards came in, they were mad. They were like, nope, you can't have this, and completely massacred them. So no one knows about that unless you actually go visit the park. So that's one place that I don't think has, I've looked for it everywhere and no one has investigated it.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Florida sounds lovely this time of year.
Yes. I still have not fully warmed up since yesterday. It's so cold.
I must say, for being in southern Arizona, I thought it was going to be warmer than it was.
No, that prison was freezing.
Yeah, it's mid-30s at night, so.
Yeah, that's actually where we're about to tip off at, is in the 30s. So, also Key West. I would totally investigate Key West.
Key West is fun. I've only been there once, a couple of decades ago, actually. Went on a walking ghost tour with my family. That was one of the first ghost tours I ever went on. Maybe that spurred and led me to where I am now. But yeah.
Planted the seed.
Yeah, that's a whole lot of fun there too.
I was about to say, we all know, if you ask me, I can tell you all the places in St. Augustine to go because I've done them all.
I like it.
Nice.
I like that a lot.
Practically. Let's see. I want to do Savannah. I think I'm going to try and shoot for that next year, just because it's not far. I still want to do New Orleans. Every time I've booked a trip to New Orleans, there's been like a storm or something else has came up, and I'm like, clearly I'm not supposed to go yet.
Right. You know, with New Orleans, I haven't done a deep dive into locations to be able to reserve for private investigations. If anyone, or if you ever come across this, Chrissy, but if any listeners have any spots that they enjoy or that they know of for locations in New Orleans, I would love to hear them. People can send it to us on Instagram or on Facebook. I think we have an email address, drghosthunterslc@gmail.com too. So any of those, would love to hear it, because I really do think New Orleans is going to be in our future.
Yeah.
Texas too. Oddly enough, not that I really want to stay very long in Texas, but Texas has a lot too. When you think about the Alamo, and then Corpus Christi apparently has something there. So
a whole lot of history there too. Again, going back to the history thing. Yeah.
Well, when do you guys plan on putting out the videos that you're currently live streaming and stuff right now? So is there a good timeline, or?
Good question. So I was chatting with the editing team this morning, which is me, and crying over the amount of footage that we filmed last night and trying to think about when I'm going to be able to do this. So my hope, and I like that you asked this, so we'll put it out there and that way it'll hold me committed to it. My hope is that we will get these investigations out in March. And the goal this year, when I put out the investigations, as opposed to sporadically, I want them in consecutive weeks. I want people to be able to enjoy them for a good period of time while I'm working on the next set too. So hopefully March to April at the absolute latest, we'll have these videos edited up in a digestible form for everyone to see.
Nice. How did you guys, because I watched the video, I died laughing. Your top 5 locations video that you guys did. The call out to National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation with the So
well,
how did you guys collectively come up with did you guys collectively come up and do the voting, or was it like Jason likes this one, I like this one, Sarah had like this one?
I had been thinking about doing a top 5 video for the last few months. And so as we would get together, I would just kind of pick their brains. And then I ultimately just put them together. Yeah, is kind of how that went. The number one, Jamie actually mentioned, being the skeptic. I said, what is your most fun moment? She's like, honestly, it's just hanging out and playing the games. I'm like, gosh, that is kind of the thing that I get most excited for when we go out on these things. So that's how that one became number one. The national, Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home, you certainly wanted in there, and I think with good reason too. So I think it was a little bit collective effort.
Yeah, it was collective. We built it over time.
Yeah, we did.
Well, awesome. So, is there anything else you guys want to share or cover?
I think just another call out that we certainly want our YouTube, which is where we predominantly put out our content, to be very enjoyable for everyone who consumes content. And if anyone has ideas of how they would like their paranormal viewing experience to differ, I am all ears. Yep. I am certainly of the belief that we don't have all the answers, but I love brainstorming and trying new things. That is right up my alley. So we are all ears. If anyone has any suggestions there. If anyone wants to chat with us, we always love chatting with people too and hearing their experiences. If you're ever nearby in a location where we're going to investigate, we'd love to get together. Let's have dinner. Let's go investigate. We're most active. I'm most active on Instagram, Dr. Ghost Hunters. Facebook I've been trying to get into as well because there's some great communities out there, and that's really where I've started to get linked up with people, including Tombstone. That's how that started. You can always send us an email as well at drghosthunterslc@gmail.com. So would love to hear that. And please, everyone, go check out our videos on YouTube, Dr. Ghost Hunters. Subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you too can join with us for these live streams when we have them.
Yep. All right.
Anything else you got? We cover that one, Jason?
What's Instagram?
You have an Android. You still have MySpace as your sole social media.
Ooh. So, man.
So we're still working on Jason.
I leave all that to Chad and Sarah. So.
That's what we appreciate about it.
Just a quick question. Have you guys figured out how to live stream YouTube into Instagram and your Facebook yet? I think there's a way to do it.
Yeah. So yes and no. So currently we use StreamYard as our platform to stream that. They give the opportunity to live stream directly to Facebook, which for the first one or two we did. However, at the reins of this current road trip, Sarah has been on the monitor. And the problem that she's run into is that the comments in the chat, which we certainly love and keep us entertained, they're double posting. And so she turned off the Facebook stream. So we're still working on it and need to get all of that ironed out, because I would love for people to be able to experience this on whatever platform is easiest for them, not just the one that we guide them to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, awesome. Can't wait to see that.
Yeah. So more to come.
I'll let you know how to do that on MySpace.
Yeah. I'm sure. Keep me posted.
Coding, some extra coding. Give it the flashing.
Yeah. You better have us in your top 5.
Last question, actually. When are you guys going to start making some merch?
That's a great question. And I think another one of those that we need to pinpoint, because Sarah can make really good merch. The problem is volume of it. So I think that's another one that as people demand it, we will make it. That's probably a good tease.
Yeah,
that's a good answer. All right. Well, I'll be looking for the merch. I'm just saying. I love supporting everyone. So
we appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
But other than that, I hope you guys had a really good holiday, by the way, and have a great New Year.
Yeah, thank you as well.
I hope tonight's live stream is nice and eventful. And also, I will also say this. Make sure you do that little Bridge of Sorrows, because I feel like that might have something there too. Like, even if you just do like a really quick, small SD session, like, give it a try.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty cool.
I like it.
All right. Well, you guys.
Well, thanks for having us on, Christy.
You guys enjoy your brocation.
That's kind of what it is. I haven't heard that term before. I like that.
We did have romantic time in the Madam Suite.
Yeah, we did. It was a lovely evening.
Just switch beds, take turns. Whatever.
Exactly.
But other than that, I really appreciate you guys reaching out and wanting to do this. I always love talking to you guys. So with that, I can't wait for tonight. I'm really excited. Yay.
Great.
And
we'll keep the comments coming. You had some great suggestions last night. So
thanks. Always, especially in SD sessions, have someone get touched.
It's not me.
They like you, Chad. You're the one that always gets touched.
I know.
All right. Well, you guys have a great night. Have fun live streaming, and I will talk to you again some other time.
Great.
All right. Sounds great.
We'll see you online tonight.
Yeah.
Bye.